Welcome, everyone. It is a pleasure to be here with you today, wherever you find yourself in the world. I actually have so many thoughts to share with you. I want to apologize in advance for any ambulances, any sirens that you may hear. I am currently in the Bronx, in the epicenter in New York City. So we are still, coping with COVID-19 and its outbreak and the contagion. And I want to start there. The fact that this pandemic has brought on a serious disruption in our daily lives. And this idea that it's exposed how fragile we are, and it's also exposed how interconnected we are as a global unit, as a species. And to suggest that there are an array of resources right now that we can tap into to build our resilience and to kind of support us in transitioning and even thriving through this very tumultuous time. And I want to kind of actually talk about that piece around the siren and the ambulances. Right now, on average, they've reduced in terms of frequency, but 4 to 5 ambulances drive by my neighborhood, all of them carrying vulnerable people with all kinds of different ailments, maybe even those infected by COVID. And initially, when the outbreak really first began in New York City, every time I heard a siren, my nervous system became overactive. I became really nervous, and I was on edge. And I noticed that is the state of affairs for many people around the world. And our nervous system is on hyperdrive right now. And one of the things that I've done is to reframe. Anytime a siren drives by, instead of thinking about it as kind of a reminder of the outbreak, but rather giving me an opportunity to express compassion for the person in that siren, express compassion for the person driving that ambulance, express compassion for the healthcare workers who are going to be taking care of that individual. And that shift, that reframing has been so helpful for me. And it's in the line of what cognitive therapists called cognitive reframing. So reframing and relabeling reality in order to kind of look at it from an alternative perspective. I also want to provide you with some information on some of the leading research and researchers who are doing some very powerful work. I want to begin with Stephen Kotler. Stephen Kotler is a profound futurist and researcher doing work around flow psychology, thinking about what are the activities and approaches to sustaining flow and peak performance. So he has done incredible research on high-performing athletes and has brought together a rich array of scholars in the Flow Research Collective, looking at what are the conditions that need to be in place to increase our productivity, but also sustaining peak performance, especially in times of crisis, right? So he looks at high-performing athletes. He draws on Navy SEALs, high performance metrics and exercises, and he draws on positive psychology as well, and this beautiful field titled Human Flourishing. So think about that. What a powerful time now, in light of this crisis, to think about human flourishing, to think about positive psychology, to think about peak performance. So I want to just highlight 3 things from those particular strands and fields. One is gratitude. Very simple. They've done all kinds of research on people looking at the impact of gratitude. And they've noticed that people who have a gratitude practice in the morning or in the evening, spending 5 minutes or so just jotting down what you're grateful for, literally increases your sense of well-being at incredible levels. So having a gratitude practice. 2, exercise, of course. Exercise produces all kinds of chemicals in the brain and the body that increase endorphins, and that really supports with kind of giving you a little thrust and momentum in the day, right? And we know that, right? Exercise is important, but gratitude, exercise. And the last one is a mindfulness practice, right? So a mindfulness practice can be an example of many things. Can be you can be silent meditation where you close your eyes and really kind of find your center. And it could be a walking meditation, it could be a writing meditation, it could be a dancing meditation. You know, all kinds of different mindfulness practices are really powerful for centering the body. And what you want to really understand is that what mindfulness does is it creates an opportunity to balance the nervous system. We have the parasympathetic system and the sympathetic system. And the sympathetic system is usually involved when we are afraid, when we fight, flee, or flees, right? And the parasympathetic is creating feelings of ease and relaxation. So by engaging in mindfulness practices, you end up really, literally, when we engage in mindfulness practices and we breathe deeply, not just shallow breaths like into our shoulders, but deep breaths down into our diaphragm, gentle, deep inhales and exhales, we literally massage the vagus nerve, one of the most powerful parts of our anatomy. The vagus nerve is pretty much in charge of regulating our nervous system, especially our parasympathetic system. So by engaging in mindfulness practices, we literally massage the vagus nerve and create and intensify our feelings of ease and well-being. Now, I'd be remiss without making a comment, the fact that there are limits to mindfulness, because we are in the face of not just a pandemic, but structural forces and conditions that have been in place for several hundred years. And as we can see how COVID-19 has really disproportionately impacted communities of color, especially the African-American community in my city, in New York City, the Latino community specifically as well. But we know that those structural forces have been in place for a very, very long time, since the arrival of enslaved Africans in 1619. So what we need to understand now is that, yes, mindfulness helps. Yes, thinking about positive psychology supports. Yes, thinking about peak performance also enhances our well-being. But this is an opportunity to look at the structural forces that produce inequality in the first place. So I want to kind of acknowledge that, and I want to acknowledge the murder of Ahmaud Arbery, young brother who was running, because his death is an example of the racial divisiveness and the tensions that are still present in this country, that are remnants and they remain there from this 400-year period. So what do we do with all that? How do we hold the trauma that comes from COVID-19 and the trauma that comes from living in a divisive world? We have to be gentle with ourselves and draw on human flourishing, but specifically not just mindfulness, but being clear that healing is very important. That healing is actually one of the most important things that we can do right now, not just being productive, but cultivating a sense of well-being that goes deep into our own personal psychology and in the collective psychology of the whole. And I want to give you some tips around personal healing practices. One, again, the mindfulness practices, the gratitude, but also finding opportunities to co-regulate. Co-regulate meaning having opportunities to connect with other people and making sense of the current moment and sharing anxieties. That literally allows you to kind of sync with another person's nervous system and really stabilize and find support. And spiritual resourcing, finding resources, looking at people who are grounded. So look in your community, who is grounded? It could be immediate community, it could be in the virtual community, and really not just following them in terms of likes, but literally tuning into their spiritual energy. And I want to end by saying that the work of diversity and inclusion and tech inclusion is not just to have more bodies in the room that represent communities that have been historically marginalized. It's not just about having more Black faces in high places. I argue that diversity and inclusion, the work that tech inclusion is doing, is intergenerational healing, structural healing, creating opportunities for voices that have been historically marginalized to have a room and a seat at the table to make decisions and be part of this fourth industrial revolution that is happening right now. So with that being said, I want to send so much energy your way, so much energy as you build the resiliency that we need to transcend and move through this moment. I want to plug in the organization Heal House in Brooklyn, incredible subscription service to find well-being. I want to plug in Liberate Meditation app. And lastly, the Heritage and Cultural Society of Africa, because we know now that the long legacy of slavery has cut across the globe in terms of inequality. So with that being said, thank you so much. And I hope that some of the resources that I briefly shared provide you with some spiritual and psychological sustenance. Thank you.